I'm here with Scott Landis of Rhino Markers and Infrastructure Resources. And so this is a conversation I've been wanting to have for a while with Scott. And, the reason that the timing of this interview, right, and why he's coming on to what I call the GPR hot seat, which is, as I was telling him before, my very own selfish platform to get to have conversations with people I'm interested in talking with, and I get to learn from people that I'm interested in learning from, because no matter how long you've been doing what you're doing, you can always learn more. And so today we have Scott Landis on, like I said, of Rhino Markers and Infrastructure Resources. I am Dan Bigman, the GPR professor from LearnGPR.com and the president and founder of Bigman Geophysical. We are out there helping to support the damage prevention industry, the underground mapping industry, the structural inspection industry. And I'm interested to hear about Scott's sort of background. But the reason I'm having him on now is something big that we are doing together. And so Scott's been putting on a conference for a while. I mean, probably almost 20 years, I think, Scott, and you'll be able to sort of, talk to that in a moment. But despite having put on a conference for the damage prevention industry for a long time, he and I, in this upcoming year, are actually going to launch the Global GPR Congress. I've been asked by a lot of people if there is a GPR conference out there that is available to folks, that are doing this every day out in the field. And unfortunately, there isn't. I mean, there's some GPR conferences out there, but nothing that's geared towards the people actually out there, getting it done every day. And so we wanted to create a conference, a congress that professionals can come, share their experiences, network with each other, have open discussions in public about critical topics in our industry. And so we're going to have that in Tampa in March 2021. What are the dates? I think it's the 23rd to the 21st, 22nd is the Congress. Am I got that right?
Yeah, 21st through the 24th, I guess.
Is the full week.
Yeah.
And the GPR Congress specifically is the 21st, 22nd, and then the rest of the damage prevention conference kicks off for the rest of that entire week. It's going to be an amazing, amazing, amazing event. If you have felt cooped up during 2020 and you want to get out and actually interact with other professionals, this is the place to do it. I promise you this, the safety conference is going to take all the safety precautions to make sure people feel comfortable about COVID. You do not want to miss this. It's going to be incredible. In addition, we are partnering with a brand new trade association wrapped around the GPR industry, which we didn't start, but knew that they'd be a really critical group to have tied into this as well. So make sure you look it up. Go to gprcongress.com. Again, it's gprcongress.com. Submit an abstract, enroll, and you get a discount for the entire week if you do that. So we'll circle back around to this, but let's sort of kick it off with Scott. Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and sort of jump into, Rhino Markers and how that even started and came about, and, where people can go find even information about it.
Yeah, great, Dan. Thanks for having me on the hot seat, especially live. I've never done anything live before, so this is fun. I went to the University of Minnesota and got my degree in damage prevention. No, actually not, but I did go to the University of Minnesota. And after I graduated, I had a couple jobs, and a friend of mine's dad had started a company out in Carson City, Nevada called Carsonite that made fiberglass markers. And he kept trying to talk me into going out there and working for them. And eventually I did. And as a part of that, they made colored fiberglass markers to mark buried utilities. And I just kind of really gravitated to that part of the business, to the utilities and the damage prevention and the whole one call industry. So that was literally back before some of you were born, probably about 82. And so I did that for about 8 years, and then kind of Rhino was born because I got fired. So I needed to quickly find a way to make a living and dream something up. And again, I just really like the utility industry and protecting the buried cables and safety. And so I kind of literally started out as a contract national sales manager for a few companies wanting to sell products into the utilities, because I didn't have any money, and it is funny looking back now, because at the time, the one thing I said was, I know for sure what I don't want to do is get into manufacturing. And so now 30 years later, we have 80,000 square feet of manufacturing down in Waseca. So, and through that process, I kind of, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit how we kind of morphed into infrastructure resources, or where you'd like me to head, but I can go any direction you want.
Yeah, well, let me ask you a question then about rhino markers, right? So you end up sort of stumbling into this after getting fired. You like the damage prevention space. Why not go into damage prevention, right? Not wanting to do, let's say, manufacturing, although that's what you end up in. Why not go into, field technician, engineer, whatever it is? Why sort of the take on markers? And I guess when you started Rhino Markers, what else was out there at that time to, help people actually mark what's buried below the ground surface?
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy to think about, right? Because in today's day, and actually in the previous hot seat we had just a couple interviews ago, talking about someday, right, being able to have everything on a device and being able to see where you are. Even so, not everybody's going to have access to it or going to look at it. So markers will still be critical. But what was it like then? Were there, what were the markers even like, look like? And why'd you end up in this space as a support role to the industry versus being like a technician in the field or something like that?
Well, first of all, the way you phrased the question, you made me feel really old now.
My bad.
But, when I first got into the industry, the flat fiberglass post was kind of a new thing. Before, everybody had basically used metal posts and signs, and the flat fiberglass was kind of new because it was colored. So, you could color code it with the APWA color code. So that was pretty cool. And you could actually run over them with a car and they would snap back up a few times. So it was kind of a neat idea. And, when I got fired, I again, without kind of any money, my expertise, I thought, was really in understanding the kind of the damage prevention universe and really working with manufacturers reps. And so what I went out to do is gather a few manufacturers who had products they wanted to sell in the damage prevention arena. Then I went out and hired reps to go out and sell those products. And eventually, over time, we started developing our own products. So, it's kind of funny, but the simple thing, our main product, our number one product, is what we call our TriView. It's a triangular marker post that you can run over, and it does all kinds of magical things. But the interesting concept at the time was most of these markers were either flat so that you could only see them from the front and back in terms of legend.
You still see those around. I mean,
yeah. Oh, they're still huge.
It's kind of odd now that you think about it. And
yeah, and they were round ones, which we have also. But the problem with the round one is the legend's kind of hard to read on a curve. And so, with this great engineering mind of mine, I said, well, gee, don't we want to see the legend from every direction? And it seemed pretty simple. So that came down to a square or a triangle. And a triangle looked like a better idea because it was less material, and I thought it might hold up better if it got hit. So it was really, that simple in terms of coming up with that concept.
So what kind of products did you sell before you guys manufactured your own products? Did you sell locators? What would you stick to?
No, great question. So we had a marker post that another manufacturer made, and then we also sold some signs, and we sold markers that glued down to the curbs. That was kind of our main grouping of products, but it kind of all did wrap around damage prevention and marking. And eventually people wanted things that we didn't have, so we just learned how to make them. And
sure. So fast forward till today. Now you make a variety of different markers, but you do sell other products besides markers. I feel like I poked around your website and saw some other stuff, but
yeah, most everything is markers. But maybe what you're thinking about, Dan, is we have what we call our hit kit, which is unfortunately what you need to use if someone wasn't paying attention to the markers.
Sure.
And they hit a cable or a pipe. Most, or I should say, a lot of the argument surrounds, did you call, number one, and secondly, if you did call, were you digging within the tolerance zone with mechanized equipment and things like that? So kind of really documenting that damage after it happened is pretty critical in terms of trying to find out who's at fault.
Sure. It's interesting. I mean, I've had to consult on a couple of legal cases as an expert witness to sort of evaluate if everything was sort of done, after a damage occurred, a strike, of a utility occurred. And, sometimes we look at it and we're like, you know what, these people did everything they possibly could to avoid it, but there are just limits, right? There will be damages, even if you take all of the precautions necessary, because sometimes, and coming from the field of remote sensing, right, is there's just unfindable services. Like it just happens, right? They either don't contrast enough, or you can't hold a current, or it was buried with a tracer wire and now that's gone, or it's too deep for the size of it to have a GPR resolve it, whatever. So things happen. However, I've been on the other side, and you start to look at what folks did, not only in how they carried it out, but second is, how did you deal with it after the strike occurred? And you almost feel like you're in a nightmare trying to do it. Like you'll wake up from this, because how could somebody have done such so little to sort of document what occurred while they were conducting their inspection or investigation or locate, and so little to document what occurred after damage actually happened. And I didn't know that you guys had that. So that's an interesting thing, but that would make a lot of sense to sort of help, nip it in the bud as best as possible. Because if I was, reviewing somebody's sort of testimony, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in there was Exhibit A and it was a full kit, that would definitely help their argument when I'm coming and try to evaluate what happened. So that's a really interesting product to have.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's funny, Dan, because there's no question that what you see in being involved in court cases, I'm sure you see it, that the vast majority of pictures of a damage are like this really tight shot of a cut cable or a pipe, which gives you zero information on why
no context
happened, and it's really, really common. And so yeah, these are really easy tools to use, and really helps your case if you get to court.
Sure. Okay, so how do you go from markers, obviously damage prevention industry, but markers into saving lives through education, right? Which is sort of the tagline, I guess, of, I don't know if it's of infrastructure resource in total, but certainly of damage prevention professional, or DP Pro, which it's now called. How'd you make that transition? And just to let all of the viewers know, is that it's a great resource. It's, that's I guess you guys publish it quarterly. I've written in it, or more than quarterly, because I think you've had some specials, but I've written in it multiple times. So even if you don't want to go check out my articles, go check out somebody else's articles in there. It's a great resource. And I think it's dp-pro.com.
Yes.
And so I know that by heart, by the way, because I do go on and read it. So everybody else should definitely check it out. It's a free resource, well worth it. But how'd you make that transition?
Yeah, well, that's a great question as well. It kind of goes back to when I was working at Carsonite, the fiberglass post company. There really wasn't any good information on how you should mark. The PHMSA had regulations on pipelines to a degree on what they had to do, but that was it. So we kind of went to Underground Focus magazine, that the guy who started it and the founder, Ron Rosenkrantz, and he happened to be, I'm in Minneapolis, and Ron happened to be living in Minneapolis at the time. And so we sat down and kind of wrote the book called Stop Diggins way back. There must have been the mid to late 80s. And that kind of got me involved in that. And then when I started Rhino, I went back to Ron and I said, hey, I don't know if anybody would be interested, but I'd be game to write a regular column on marking and, kind of damage prevention. And he said, sure. And then surprisingly, people were actually reading the column. So that kind of got me into that mode of things. And then really from there, I had a friend who owned a trade show business, and I went to him and said, our industry, damage prevention, really needs a dedicated conference and show, because otherwise you've got the media, which is great, but you don't really have a great place to get everybody talking face to face, which is really where the solutions are found. So we did a survey with the magazine, with Underground Focus, and it looked like the industry wanted one, and it was perfect because Ron Rosenkrantz was willing to kind of help curate the educational content, and my friend was willing to do the show. So we started the damage prevention convention, which went for a number of years. And then my friend had the audacity to sell his business. And the company that ended up buying him was just kind of the trade show B2B publication industry, and they really could care less about damage prevention.
Sure.
So I just couldn't be affiliated with it anymore. So
And that's tough, you know, and we see that all the time, I think, in sort of the trade show magazine space, where, right, look, they really are interested and they're experts in the trade show and they're experts in the publication piece, the media piece, but there is no passion behind what they're trying to present, right, whether it's in the media or in a trade show kind of thing. And it shows, right? And I think the difference with what you guys have done, and having been a attendee multiple times and done presentations at the safety conference, is it's the opposite. You know, it really shows how much you all care about the actual industry, right? You care about safety, you care about reducing damages, and it does make such a difference when you're a damage prevention company putting on damage prevention media and events versus an event and media company putting on damage prevention. You know, so it does show, just as a testament to my experience there. I found that to be the case.
Yeah.
The other thing I think you get is you get buy-in from the attendees, right? Because they know you're in the industry. You're actually selling markers, right? You're sort of walking, talking the walk, and vice versa. And everybody who comes there is always interested in, the majority of folks who are there because they want to be there, as opposed to some of these other events where they're sort of, there just because it's sort of the thing that they're supposed to do, and I've always gotten that kind of feel from your events, which has drawn me back, certainly.
That's good. I mean, because that's really, once that company got sold and it was just a trade show company, awesome. That's a great industry, but I had to disassociate. And so that kind of led to the start of infrastructure resources. And then, our excavation safety conference, which we've been doing since 2004, but kind of, as you point out, it's interesting dynamics because of Rhino. We have a lot of customers there. So they all know we also own and operate the show. So we have to put on a good show for the Rhino perspective. And besides that, Rhino and IR really have the exact same mission of saving lives. On the Rhino side, we think, we're helping our customers save lives by protecting their cables and pipelines. And on the IR side, we really believe we're saving lives through education. And it's not just something we have written on the wall. It's actually a passion for pretty much everybody that works at both companies. So it does make it works well, because as Rhino being an exhibitor too, I wear an exhibitor hat. So I'm not only just appealing to the attendees, I know what it's like to be an exhibitor. So we really do try to find the perfect marriage.
Excellent. Okay, so how has the conference changed from kind of year one to to 2019, let's say? How has it changed, and sort of what are the expectations for 2021, kind of bringing it back and hopefully pretty full force? What's been that difference? That's also a good question. I mean, in 2004, when we started, it was in Phoenix, and it was really small. And it's really grown over the years quite a bit. And for a lot of the years, we hosted another organization's annual meeting, and now we've kind of morphed, and we're hosting a bunch of different meetings. So that's really changed from the fact that we can now have everybody there and everybody talking about all the key issues. And so, obviously 2020 didn't happen. We literally had to cancel our show. It was like 2 weeks before the event when the plug was finally pulled by the governor of California. And, obviously safety first and all that. But boy, that really is a kind of a slap in the face when this is what you do. So fortunately, we've been able to move a lot of the sessions forward, and it's really been eye-opening. So for instance, in 2021,
we're fired up about the live event the last week of March in Tampa again. But 2 weeks after the live event, we're also going to be holding a virtual version of the event, which is we're really fortunate that our event was canceled way back in March, because as it turns out, this putting on a virtual conference is a big deal.
Mhm.
It's not just doing a couple webinars, right? So
Yeah.
we just totally immersed in learning the best practices and how to do this right since March. And we literally just signed a contract with our platform provider. And it's a ton of fun because there's some super cool ways to get this education out to people who could never get permission to travel. So
Yep.
what we're finding in the conference industry is there's almost nobody who can go to a live event will choose to go to a virtual event.
Mhm.
Next year is kind of that weird year because some people won't be able to go or they won't feel comfortable because of COVID, but a ton of people have that bent up desire to go. But there's still that massive chunk of the industry that they're never going to get permission to go fly across the country to go to an
Right.
event.
Or fly from abroad to come
Yes.
here, because there's nothing else like this out there except for, I guess, the other one. You guys do one in Oceania as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but besides what you're doing at Infrastructure Resources, like there's no other option. And
No.
so, I mean, a lot of our viewership is some from North America, certainly, but we got plenty from, South America, Africa, Asia, Europe, and a very limited number of those folks would ever be able to get permissions or funding to come to something in Tampa. Although I wish y'all did. I mean, I'd be happy to shake all your hands. Maybe in 2022 we'll
Yeah.
shake hands. But you understand my point. And so having the option to go to the live event for the people who can make it, but the option to get the content in a virtual format for those who can't is I think a big deal as well.
Yeah, Dan, you're absolutely right. And I will say it's what was real interesting, because we started our conference, kind of a joint venture in Oceania a couple of years ago, and we also produced one in Canada. Growing up in the U.S., we tend to, in general, I think subconsciously think we know everything and have the answers, right? We may not say that outwardly, except for some parts of the country, but in general, it's lurking back there. And what's really awesome when we've had a lot of Australians and New Zealand people come to our event and a lot of Canadians here in the U.S., but having been to a Canadian events a bunch of times and now to Australia, boy, you sure really learn the fact that there's tons to learn from all over the world. We don't have anywhere close to all the answers here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, just interacting with people from elsewhere, just don't have the constraints that you have, or, I have, or I mean, just, being from the US, because it's all, can really give, input, and vice versa. Right. I mean, I've met, actually folks from abroad who then I've met up with at the Excavation Safety Conference, who I hadn't known until I traveled. And that was, very cool to kind of meet up with them in Phoenix and such, because it's the same in the other direction, which is, wow, we do all this stuff this way in our country, but what's a few things I can learn, by going to the US and going to this conference and interacting with all these people. So I think you're right. It gets you get a lot out of it when you get international sort of mixture of people with different ideas. So then talk about kind of, you've had this big conference, for a while, since 2004, large scale excavation safety damage prevention conference. Now in 2021, like I mentioned at the beginning of the of the hot seat interview, we're starting something very special and new in 2021. It's going to be basically a day and a half of presentations, of panel discussions, of networking events, specifically related to GPR. Why did you sort of, why do you think that was the right move, and why GPR, and sort of, why the format that it is?
Yeah. So that's a really good question as well. We started out, when we started looking at 2021, we realized what we really wanted to begin was a damage prevention week, which is that last week of March that our event is. So, and the reason I say that is we really wanted to make sure that we took advantage of this whole week and started getting everybody in the world to focus their thoughts on damage prevention during the same week. You know, in a perfect world, a lot of people end up at our conference and using those related days to have things like the Global GPR Congress, so that we can bring everybody together in one place. And those who can't come, if they at least start having meetings during that week, we keep the focus there. So, you know, GPR was a natural, right? I mean, it's exactly part of our industry. It's just critical to the industry. I knew there really wasn't anything filling that void right now. And I knew you were the guy who knew GPR inside and out. And so it was kind of the natural thing. I mean, we also got like a cross-bore safety course going on, and the Marine group CAMO, which is offshore, or I should say underwater pipelines and cables. So kind of bringing all that together, and GPR was a perfect fit.
So let me ask a question then. If somebody is coming to the conference, because you said something that we actually are in talks with dealing with now, which is finding underwater pipes for a potential project. You know, does somebody have access? You know, if they come to the conference, right, how do they get access to all the other meetings? Obviously, the GPR Congress you can either come to just the Congress, or you can choose to come to the Congress plus the entire excavation safety conference, which is the entire week. You know, what if they want access to these other pieces like underwater, you know, and so forth?
Yeah, so what we kind of followed the same format we are with the GPR Congress from the standpoint of, like, for instance, the cross-bore safety course. So they're having that, you know, real focus course kind of in advance of our conference starting. But then throughout the regular full conference, we've got some of those sessions scattered throughout that are really tied into cross-bore safety. Like, we'll have other GPR related subjects throughout the conference, and it's the same thing with the submarine. So the CAMO group, the Coastal and Marine Operators Association, so they're bringing in Coast Guards and all kinds of people. It's really fascinating stuff, and they just released some best practices and online training, so people will be able to attend their kind of 4-hour deal, but then there'll also be courses during our regular full conference. So you'll be able to tie it all together, or just go get a snippet if that's all you want. You can go get the concentrated dose of GPR Congress and go home, but it'd be crazy to leave Tampa in March and miss all the other education.
Yeah. I mean, what is nice about it is, again, in this sort of like semi-precarious times, at least people have choices, right? And I think that's what people will ultimately want is, you know, you want a smaller conference for 2 days, you can come and get it, right? You want a bigger conference for 4 or 5 days, you can come and get it, right? It's your choice, whatever you're comfortable with. And I think that format makes a lot of sense then. And then, of course, tie these specific topics, but into the larger program, right, of the conference. Now, do people who come to the GPR Congress, or the underwater, or the cross-bore, or the CAMO, everyone has access to the expo hall, correct?
Yep, all those people have access to the expo hall, right? And to your earlier point too is you know, kind of what our mantra, what I tell the team here at IR is really pretty much what we are as professional listeners, right? We need to listen to what people need to learn about, what they want to do. And, you know, that kind of led to this format of, we're not going to kid ourselves and say, okay, here's the one thing we're going to do and you all need to like it, right? So instead, it's really a little bit more a la carte. And we think most people will want to be there for the whole time, but not everybody will be able to, and that's okay. So that's how we ended up with that format.
So the Congress itself, right, and sort of our discussions, and I kind of put my stamp on it, which was, I felt like it needed a couple things, right? I felt like it needed some a platform for people to get up and do sort of more traditional talks to their peers, and allow people to kind of take in a lot of different case studies, examples, some Q&A, different applications, right? Not just pipe and utility locating, but structural inspection and concrete inspection, environmental and archaeology, forensic investigation, special topics. We're going to have stuff, focused on multi-channel and data processing and whatever. So it gives sort of that inundated, series of informational talks. Then we have a series of 3 panel discussions on the second day on really, again, touchy subjects, which get it, into my sort of field house, which is, are certifications good or bad, right? And if they're good, what should they sort of consist of? And is a 2-3 day certification appropriate, or should it be 2 or 3 weeks? Look, we're going to get into that kind of stuff. And so it kind of has panel discussions, which involve the entire group, with a few panelists, but then sort of interaction with some of the group. And then there's networking events as well, which after that first night, we're going to have sort of this nice big networking dinner and food and drink and whatever. Why do you think that format, or do you think that format is going to be appropriate for this sort of first go around? What do you think that brings to people that they may not get somewhere else?
I think it's really a great format. And really kind of the way we laid it out, I think is really perfect. Like you're saying, kind of Monday afternoon, some really good educational papers, all that kind of stuff. And then really, I think what's really key is the timing of right after that, we go into the cocktail hour. Excuse me, I'm all choked up about it. It's not COVID. And networking event, because honestly, I've seen this for so many years with our main event, is that when you kick it off the first day, and in this case, we're getting all the GPR Congress people together and let them, talk to each other, get to know each other. And then especially those who are staying for the full time, you'll see that person multiple times during the week, exchange ideas. It's just a great way. And then the next day in the morning, when you're doing the kind of the panels, I think people are going to be more warmed up and willing to talk because they've now loosened up and they've got to meet new people and get reacquainted with friends they haven't seen for a while. So I think it's a really good format. And it also gets them to that comfortable state where those who are going to stay for the full conference, they've really got all this stuff under their belt. And now they're looking at all these other sessions, 60 sessions they can pick from, where they're now looking at it through this lens of everything they just learned the last day. So I think it's an awesome format that we came up with, and also will be really fun.
Yeah, I would say this is, because you make a point, and you meet people and then you have multiple conversations with them, over the week. See, now I'm getting choked up. We might start crying here, together. But I will say I probably owe you a commission, because I have come to the conference, met people that I had never met before, and I've done business with them afterwards, and continue to do business with some of these folks that I can source to the damage safety conference, to the excavation safety conference now, to the excavation safety conference. There is no, and I know some of these people. I know that I've never met them and had no idea who they were prior to coming to Florida the first time that I attended the event, and that I've worked with since then and still continue to work with them. It's crazy. And I'll say this as well, which is such a powerful thing, not just the networking and not just the education, but the way we organize this format, right? For a few $100 or whatever it is to get into the Congress. And go to gprcongress.com to learn more about it. We've done this in a way that allows you to get up in front of your peers and be the expert. You could work and do, GPR work, projects and whatever for years. It is a different thing when you get up in front of your peers, or you get up in front of a group at a conference, and you're standing there and you're actually delivering the talk. It puts you in a different light in your community. It's a big deal. By being the person who comes up and gives a talk, people then come up to you and want to talk to you. And we are providing this great opportunity for people who otherwise would not have a chance or not feel comfortable getting up in front of, for 50 minutes or an hour. We're doing shorter sessions, allows people to sort of get up and get, through their topic. But it does position you. It's been a big benefit to me. Luckily, I don't have stage fright, but it's been a big benefit to just get up in front of people at conferences in general and at your conference specifically, because it positions you in a different way. And when you leave the conference and you go to your customers, then even if you've been working with them for a long time and you're like, yeah, I just gave a talk at the conference. It was just me and 3 other people in our session that were chosen to be the experts to talk about this topic. It's a big deal. And when you talk about professional development, there are not a lot of options for folks that are in the field pushing the GPR around. There are plenty for academics, okay? And that's, again, where I come from, plenty for academics. But there's not a lot for people who don't come from academia, who aren't sort of, you don't have those opportunities otherwise. But in this case, to get up, provide a case study, let everybody else learn from it, make connections with people, talk to them throughout the week, and then go back to your hometown and be that person who flew into Tampa to get in front of the damage prevention community and actually talk about the work that you've done and have people listen to what you've done and learn from you, right? Becoming the educator really shifts you into being, viewed as an expert. And I encourage people to do it because there aren't a lot of other opportunities for folks out there, technicians and the like, to be able to, present their own sort of work. So I think it's great. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be an incredible education. And I appreciate you, reaching out to us and wanting to partner with me and my team to help put on an event like this. And I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, I just circling back a little bit to what you said earlier about the, meeting the clients and things like that. It's like, the thing that's amazing to me is the result of this is I actually have people I consider pretty good friends kind of around the world now that really are 100% because of this event.
Sure.
And meeting people, friends in Australia, Canada, all over. And now we have this event in Australia because of this, because the Australians were coming to our event here. And, really because I kind of took them around for a few days, a number of times to some one-call centers to show them how it worked here. And it was really rewarding when we did our event in Australia. It was also unique because we probably had 250 people roughly, mostly from Australia and New Zealand. We had South Africa and some Americans. But what was fascinating is these people had never had this before.
Yeah.
They never had a function where they all got together face to face and talk about solutions and damage prevention. And so that was shocking and rewarding at the same time. It was really a lot of fun and great people too.
And I think that kind of circles back and is a great place to sort of end where you're saying it's rewarding, right? And so when I sort of started, it's like, well, why'd you get into producing, markers and selling to the damage prevention community? And then why'd you sort of take on, the conference and then, damage prevention professional and the column, right, that you started to write initially, is because which is also why my kind of career shifted a little bit, and that wasn't just doing contracts, which is what I started out to do, but got into the training, got into the workshops, got into the, we do back-end support now, got into equipment rentals and supply, is because it's a different kind of level of rewarding. It's all rewarding, right? But, being a support person, I think, there's a lot to that. And I think that kind of, at least what I get from this conversation definitely drives you to some degree to sort of, help people who are looking to help other people, right? Because that's kind of what it is. And when you're in here, and I think that you were at, we had met again in Australia too. I started that, talk, it's the only time I ever did this, but, I made people sort of beat their chest and say that they were superheroes because in reality, like people in the damage prevention space are, right? And it's not because they might have technology that allows them to see through the underground or whatever, but it's because like they are, keeping people safe every day. And sort of to be, that one level back and helping the people who keep people safe is definitely a very rewarding life to live for sure. All right, closing remarks. Scott, anything you want to tell people? Where can they, go and sign up for the conference in general? Obviously, everybody go to gprcongress.com now. And whether you're seeing this on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn, because it will be everywhere, go to gprcongress.com now and check it out. Put in an abstract, submit an abstract. Go to dp-pro.com and check out their free magazine. And then, Scott, where else can they sort of find you guys and infrastructure resources and rhino markers and so forth?
Well, the conference main website is globalexcavationsafetyconference.com. Infrastructure resources, we also kind of put together a locator safety awareness week. We've got a young professionals group. So we have a bunch of other initiatives, and those are all at infrastructureresources.net. And Rhino is rhinomarkers.com if you need permanent markers to protect cables from being hit and pipelines from being dug up. That's where you can find us. I mean, we're literally 100% focused on saving lives and helping our customers do it. And that's what makes it fun. And that's what's rewarding about the industry in general.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and being on the hot seat. I hope that the conversation took some turns that maybe you weren't expecting. But I do appreciate it. I'm excited to work with you in 2021 in March at the end of that month. Everybody go to gprcongress.com, sign up for it, submit an abstract, check us out. And of course, make sure you go to BigmanGeo, that's BIGMANGEO.com to check out everything else we do as far as our technology supply and project support services that we offer. We appreciate it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we hope to see you next time.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.